This is Matt Finch, your host, and today we're going to be talking about how to get and stay free from addiction with serenity, courage, and wisdom. And here's an overview of today's topic. Specifically, how to harness the powers of acceptance of the things we can't control, courage to make positive and many times difficult changes, and wisdom to discern the difference. We'll also be looking at the Serenity prayer with fresh eyes while ditching the stigma, going deep into the not only definition of serenity, but what exactly is meant by accepting things one can't control or change, defining courage and what exactly is meant by gaining and using courage to change the things we can, what is wisdom, and what exactly is meant by gaining and using wisdom to discern the difference between the two being what we can and cannot change or control or even influence. And finally, the difference between saying the Serenity prayer, saying it with emotion and clarity, and actually living and embodying the Serenity prayer, having total unconscious competence through neuroplasticity from repetition, habit, and personality consciousness embeddedness. So I hope you're getting excited. Like I said, this is one of my favorite topics in a while, and that's a lot coming from someone that I used to not like the Serenity prayer. I had mixed feelings about it over the span of the many years that I went between AA and NA and on my own and just using Valium and marijuana, or no Jack Daniels, or no crystal crack or jack, or no after 5 p.m., etc. The Serenity prayer was probably my second least favorite prayer. First least favorite prayer at the AA meetings was the Lord's Prayer, and the one that I sort of liked was the third step prayer, which is pretty funny coming from me, that this is probably one of my favorite topics in the past year or two, and now I say all three of those aforementioned prayers on a daily basis, typically multiple times per day. So with that all being said, let's start getting right into it. Imagine this. I have, as far as I'm concerned, two different lives. And so my old life, I would think and obsess and worry and stress about and sharply focus and narrowly focus about and on, one, what I had no control or even influence over, and two, what was lacking from my life according to my subjective and pretty darn long list of 99% or more even materialistic and ego-based desires. I was probably 100% materialistic, ego-based, and vain desires and motivations. All right, so that was my old life. Constantly thinking about what ruled my mind was two things. And then I would focus on what I couldn't control. So that would be other people, places, things in the past. And I would focus oftentimes negatively on things that I had no control over. Talk about a waste of mental use of the brain. And then two, what was lacking from my life according to my subjective perceptions. So instead of what I had in my life that I was grateful for, what I was lacking. So here I am, my brain is wired day in, day out to be obsessing about things I couldn't control and things that were missing from my life. I was miserable. I was totally miserable. I was addicted. I was anxious. I was depressed. Low self-esteem. I was broke. The list goes on and on. My new life is the complete antithesis to how my brain is wired and how my thoughts and beliefs and regular habits and routines and rituals are going. So now I constantly think about and embody to a pretty powerful degree, lots of room to improve, and I live daily focused on having deep acceptance. And this has probably been one of my biggest lessons in life. Learning about, practicing, and over the span of a lot of years, a plethora of years, developing deep acceptance for things that I cannot control. Other people, places, things, and the past. Courage and action toward what I can make better and can change and can influence and work at and progress at by methods of what? My thoughts, my speech, and my behavior. What I think, what I say, and what I do. And what I do have in my life that I'm grateful for, instead of thinking about, obsessing about, worrying about, being pissed off about what was missing from my life. Instead, the antithesis, the opposite, the polar opposite, is what I have in my life, what I do have, and looking at them as blessings to have immense thanksgiving and gratitude for, such as a great home and family and my pet birdie Papaya, animal soulmate, healthy foods and supplements, fulfilling and flexible work from home, service to others, nature, good weather, good health, the working five physical senses. Not all people have all five senses working. Some people have no sense of sight. They're called blind. Some people have no sense of hearing. Those are called the hearing impaired, or they're deaf, or even partially deaf would be a bummer. My left ear, from all the years I played in bands, my left ear can't hear quite as good as my right ear. I still have pretty good hearing, but my vision lately too has been going, and on the back of a lot of packages with the writing all small, it's common for me to not even be able to read a single word. So I, stay grateful for the five physical senses. These things that many of us take for granted are actually beautiful, wonderful, extraordinary things once you go some time without them. Like, I remember I had a really, really bad cold a couple of years ago, and I couldn't breathe out of my nose for about a week and a half or 2 weeks, and also I could not hear out of both my ears very well. One ear was, I would guess, half clogged, and the other ear was almost fully clogged. So it was very difficult to hear, and it made me uncomfortable to speak because my perception of hearing was making it difficult to kind of guess or ascertain how loud to talk. And it was just between not being able to breathe and not being able to hear that well. I really had a newfound gratitude for my nose and my ears working properly. And so we'll move on. Let's look at the Serenity Prayer with fresh eyes, and let's try to ditch the stigma. I know it can be hard for a lot of us that have some bad memories, bad tastes left in our mouths from going to AA meetings. What is serenity? Serenity is a noun, and it means the state of being calm, peaceful, untroubled. It's just in my opinion, a fancy way of saying, like a kind of cool, beautiful way of saying calmness, patience, composure, tranquility of mind, mindful stillness, cool, calm, casual, collected, confident, James Bond serenity. And maybe serenity is not the word for James Bond, but yeah, just cool, calm, inner peace, untroubled. That is a phenomenal state of beingness, and not a lot of us have a lot of serenity these days in these crazy times. So it's, even though despite our circumstances, despite anything that's going on, alcohol addiction, tapering off of an opioid painkiller, getting through a divorce, dealing with intense poverty, those can make it way harder to feel serenity. So I've found that I have not much power, and so I pray, and we'll go over that towards the end, how you can either pray doing the Serenity Prayer or living the Serenity Prayer, habits for your life to feel more serenity, or if you're atheist and you don't want to pray to a higher power, how to do this in a secular way. I myself love to do the Serenity Prayer, and like I said, I used to have mixed feelings about it, not too many great feelings about it, but nowadays I love it. And I've seen the difference that my 3-prayer stack daily repetition over the span of time has done. Well, what exactly is meant by accepting things one can't control or change? I don't know if there's any other podcast, at least that I know of, that has ever done a deep dive into every single word of the Serenity Prayer like this. So what exactly is acceptance? It's also a noun. In fact, every word that we're going to cover in this, go over their descriptions. They're all nouns. And acceptance is the action of consenting to receive or undertake something offered. A second definition is the action or process of being received as adequate or suitable, typically to be admitted into a group. True acceptance, I'd say, is being able to take things as they are. It's kind of, there's a saying in AA that's life on life's terms. I don't really like that saying that much, but it's being able to just, it is what it is. That's the situation. And really it's rational. It's logic. It's very logical. If we can't change something, that is other people, we can't change other people. We can't change the past. We can't change corporations. There's so many things we can't change. And a lot of us, myself included in the past, spent a lot of time worrying about, stressing about, getting resentful and angry and pissed off about things that we literally have zero control or even influence over. Zero. Think about politics. What can we do? The average Joe or Jane or Marina or Damone or the average adult human citizen, what can we do to control the outcome of politics other than vote? Well, we can be an activist. We could be a podcaster about politics. We could be a YouTuber about politics. We could go help somebody that we want to get elected. We could donate to them, or we could go to one of their rallies. So there's only so much we can do. Most of us, the furthest we go is vote, and not even a lot of people vote. So it's just a bunch of bitching and bickering and getting angry, and then they don't even vote. So true acceptance is being able to acknowledge that that's just logically and rationally a waste of our time, a waste of our energy, a waste of all of our resources that we could be using for things that we can control or change or influence. And the things that we can change are what we think, say, and do. And this is an important thing too. Listen to this. Importantly, we don't have to like the situation or the thing or the person, etc. We don't have to like them or it. We don't have to want them or it. We don't even have to choose or even support them, they, he, she, or it, or whatever. We just simply recognize that it is what it is, or they are what they are. What is out of our control and ability to change? It's other people, places, things, and the past. When it comes to courage, this resource and internal resource is very important, and without it, we become fraidy cats. Just think about if you've ever seen The Wizard of Oz, the Cowardly Lion. What was he lacking? Courage. Courage. And if he had some courage, and if I were the king of the forest, if I were the king, I need some courage. Courage. I need some courage. I need some of that noun called courage, which is the ability to do something that frightens us. It's strength in the face of pain or grief or something difficult, some tragedy, some unforeseen bad thing, negative thing that happened, or something that we're afraid to do. How do we do it? We use courage. When we do anything that frightens us, that's where courage comes in. I'm not very good at creating courage from scratch, so I like to ask the creator for courage. It's also the quality of mind or spirit, not body, but this is a mind or spirit quality that enables a person, such as you, such as me, to face adversity, difficulty, even danger without fear, or doing it even with the fear. I've been saying, I have a new mantra lately, and that is no fear. Not the brand of clothing that I used to wear called No Fear, when my mom would take me shopping when I was a teenager to places like JCPenney, and back in the day, Mervyn's was still open, and I think those were the main two stores we'd go to for No Fear brand cool kid clothing. Courage is a virtue when we choose to do good, especially when that is most difficult. Courage most demands our respect when it incurs risk without selfish motivation. When I was in my addiction of alcohol and or drugs, depending on the time, I used a lot of selfish motivation back then. I was very self-centered, just like they say in the big book, self-centered, self-seeking, selfish. Everything was me, 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 me. Pour me another drink. I was so self-focused. I'm really glad that I outgrew that. And courage is also moral strength in the face of danger. It's most virtuous when it's also combined with knowledge, wisdom, and opinion. And we're going to talk about wisdom next, which is my favorite of all these topics. Love, wisdom, developing, nurturing, fostering, cultivating, and aiming love, wisdom, kanai through life. Kanai is constant and never-ending improvement of love, wisdom, and balancing the two as well. And to review, what are things we can use courage to change? Well, that's our own thoughts, our own speech, our own behavior, our own thoughts, our own speech, and our own behavior. Or to put it even more simply, what you think, say, and do. TSD. And to dive even deeper, what exactly is meant by gaining and using courage to change things one can? Well, think about the biggest things in your own life right now that you want to change. It could be quitting drinking, maybe tapering off Suboxone or the generic buprenorphine / naloxone. It could be getting back into dating. Oh, that sounds scary to me. To find a long-term partner or spouse. I would need so much courage to do that. Or losing 30 pounds, or moving in to a nicer place to live, a home. Okay, and now think about, why don't you already have those things the way you want them to be? Think about it. Think about that for a second. How come you already haven't changed those things? How come you're where you are, not where you want to be? Not a lot of us ask that question. It's a funny thing. It's a funny thing. Usually the reason that we don't already have the thing that we want changed, usually a combination of fear, along with debilitated physical and or mental health, and or a lack of resources, e.g. money, time, connections with people, network, etc. Usually it's a combination of those things. So for example, somebody wants to quit drinking, but they don't have time away from work. Maybe they're working 6 days a week and they can't take time off, and they would have to go through a detox. Maybe they're drinking 2 small or medium-sized bottles of whiskey a day and a 12-pack of beer every night. Or maybe the other way around, they drink a 12-pack of beer from the morning when they wake up throughout their workday, and then they hit the whiskey hard all night till they pass out or black out, and then pass out. And then they just can't, and they make $200,000 a year at their job, and if they're not allowed to take time off because things are way too busy and they're the only person that they could do their job. Or maybe it's something like a severe diagnosis of horrible, severe generalized and social anxiety disorder, which is, with that and fear, causing somebody to not get back into the dating world or getting on a dating app or something like that. So usually if you don't have what you already want, then it's a combination of those. Before you can harness courage to change an area of your life, you have to have courage. So before you can harness it and aim it and utilize it with action, we got to have it first. And like I said before, I'm not great at fostering courage or nurturing it or growing it out of my own volition and self-agency or bravery. So I, every morning, and usually at least 2 times or more throughout the day, pray for courage. I pray for courage, and I direct the prayers to God. Or since there's so much stigma with the Serenity prayer, there's also so much stigma with God. And due to that, it can help to actually reframe God. What about God, G.O.U.D, acronym, Grand Master of Universal Design? Or how about the word Creator, or the Infinite Creator, or the One Infinite Creator, or Infinite Intelligence of some type of source, consciousness, energy that's infinitely intelligent, infinitely wise, omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, or the word universe or nature, or Jesus, or the Tao, or Source, or True Source, or even Eddie Van Halen. I remember I had for about 2.5 years, I was a caregiver, live-in caregiver. I worked for a company called In-Home Supportive Services, IHSS. A really good gig and really good. I had epic health insurance too. I had the best plan at Sharp Health Insurance, and my copay was almost nothing. It was like $50. I had them directly deposited or directly taken from my check, and that was nice health insurance. So anyways, I took care of this guy. I was his friend before I was his caregiver. He was the older brother of one of my friends, and it turned out at one point in my mid-20s he needed a caregiver, on the stipulation too that the caregiver move in. So my position was like part-time outpatient service. So I was just supposed to go to his house and do about 26 hours of work per week. Things like ambulation, which is pushing him around in his wheelchair. He had muscular dystrophy, which breaks down the muscles over time, and you eventually can't walk, and eventually a lot of them die from respiratory failure because the lung muscles, etc., heart muscle, deteriorates. He was obsessed with Iron Maiden. He was about 10 years older than me, so he was like an 80s dude. I grew up in the 80s when I was a little infant and toddler and not even a teenager. He grew up in the 80s when he was a teenager and getting into his 18, 19, 20, I guess. So he loved Eddie Van Halen and Iron Maiden and Metallica. I loved Metallica too, but when he first started to go to AA, he didn't believe in God. He was total atheist. And he was not even slightly agnostic. He was totally, if there's a God, he wouldn't have given me this muscular dystrophy. How could there be a God when he allows people to be confined to a wheelchair? And so I understood his point, but he chose for his higher power, as they let you do in Alcoholics Anonymous, on the step where you give your life over to a higher power. He chose his higher power was Eddie Van Halen. I thought that was pretty cool. All right, moving on before I go off on too many tangents here. What is wisdom? The final noun for this episode. It's the ability to make good judgments based on what you have learned from your experience, or the knowledge or and understanding that gives you this ability. Here's what Wikipedia has to say about wisdom. It's the ability to contemplate and act productively using knowledge, experience, understanding, common sense, and insight. Wisdom is associated with attributes such as unbiased judgment, compassion, experiential self-knowledge, self-transcendence, I love that term, and non-attachment, aka non-grasping, non-clinging, a very Buddhist principle, and virtues such as ethics and benevolence, goodness, kindness, beauty. Those were my additions. I love this topic. Wisdom has been defined in many ways, and there are several distinct approaches to assessing the characteristics attributed to wisdom. And this is still Wikipedia continued. The Oxford English Dictionary defines wisdom as, quote, capacity of judging rightly in matters relating to life and conduct, soundness of judgment in the choice of means and ends, sometimes, less strictly, sound sense, especially in practical affairs. End quote. Charles Haddon Spurgeon defined wisdom as the right use of knowledge. Robert Sutton and Andrew Hargadon defined the attitude of wisdom as acting with knowledge while doubting what one knows. In social and psychological sciences, several distinct approaches to wisdom exist, along with techniques of operationalization and measurement of wisdom as a psychological construct. Wisdom is the capacity to have foreknowledge of something, to know the consequences, positive and negative, of the available courses of action, and take the best of the available options, closely linked to the truth. Another word I totally love. Moving beyond Wikipedia, let's go deeper. What exactly is meant by gaining and using wisdom to discern the difference between the two, what we can and cannot change or control? Now another exercise. Think about the main thoughts that pop into your own mind regularly that are negative, fearful, worrisome, stressful, resentful, and or angry, etc. ... You fill in the blank. Wisdom in the sense of embodying and living the Serenity Prayer is keen discernment between where to invest your time, focus, and energy. Remember how I was saying that I used to have a brain and there was my two lives. In my first life, I used to have a brain that was wired to think and obsess and worry constantly about things out, way out of my scope of control, ability to change, and really even my ability to influence at all in most cases. I was miserable since the thoughts ranged on a spectrum of unpleasant to highly stressful or painful, frightening, fearful, or worse. Nowadays, in my second life, my new life, hi papaya, I have a brain that automatically accepts everything and everyone and the past, all the things that I can't control or change, etc., that I have no agency to change or influence. You could actually say that I'm surrendered to the embracing of joyously watching life unfold as it is. It is what it is. I used to say, oh, if only this person weren't like this, and only if our country was like this, and only if life were like this, and only if I had this, and only if this wasn't so, and only if they weren't so, and on and on and on. Then I'd be happy. No, that's not how it is. For things to change, I have to change. For things to get better, I have to get better. Not this person or this president or this thing or this law or this policy or this principle or this law of nature. No. Those were two Jim Rohn quotes. He's one of the personal development authors and teachers, rest in peace, that has some of the best and most helpful personal development quotes ever. My brain nowadays automatically focuses on where to aim my intentions and to where to aim my goals and where to aim my thinking and my behaving and my habit creation, which all 100% reside in the realm of what I can indeed change and control, which again are three things: what I think, what I say, and what I do. What you think about, your speech, and what you do. So simple when you think about it. Everyone on the planet has 24 hours. We all have 24 hours, and we can all control what we think, say, and do to some degree. Some of us have more agency over those things than others. There's a huge discrepancy of that. We all have equal worth, but we're not all equal in our ability to use the intellect to think, and the intuition to intuit, and the mind and the brain and the spirit to what we say, and our physical bodies and our brain health, what we do. And addiction, especially severe addiction, can cripple our prefrontal cortex, the executive decision maker of the brain. That makes what we think, what we say, and what we do much more difficult to do what we want, because drugs and or alcohol have hijacked that spot. So our free will and our free agency over our speech, our thoughts, and our behaviors varies widely depending on the person and their lifestyle. Here are my final thoughts on this topic. There's a vast difference between saying the Serenity Prayer, saying it with emotion and with clarity, and actually living the Serenity Prayer through embodiment, unconscious competence, through neuroplasticity from repetition, habit, and personality consciousness embeddedness. I used to hate the Serenity Prayer in AA, but nowadays, like I said earlier, it's the third prayer in my prayer stack. And it's a habit stack. So automatically, I've trained my mind and my neural pathways to every single morning in my planner, I write down my day, and the first thing is pray, the second thing is journal, and then on and on and on. So that habit gets the next habit of praying going, the Lord's Prayer, and then the Lord's Prayer activates the habit of the AA third step prayer, which activates in turn the final prayer habit, which is the Serenity Prayer. And I've done this for so long now that nowadays I'm living the Serenity Prayer. I'm not just saying it every once in a while at an AA meeting. I don't even go to AA. I haven't even been there in around a decade. But I sure like some of the stuff that I learned at AA. A lot of it, actually, probably more stuff than I disliked. If you look at praying like a chore, or like maybe you're agnostic or atheist, well, in this, I wouldn't even probably recommend praying. I believe them with all my heart, and I live in accordance with them to the best of my ability. But if you don't believe in God or intelligent design even, and you're an atheist or a heavy-duty agnostic even, then maybe instead of praying, you might focus on optimizing through your own self-discipline and self-direction and self-awareness. Optimize your bravery, your courage, and wisdom and discernment and critical thinking and habits, so you can customize your path forward. Take what you like and leave the rest to each their own. And with that being said, as always, my friend, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode.